Good evening, everybody. Night 3 of FinCom budget review. Turn things over to Steve to get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we're going to cover IT and public safety and public works. Before we get started, I want to just some follow-up information from last night's meeting. There was a question about seniors utilizing the senior center. The FY23, which is the most recent year that we have complete information on, we had around 3,000 seniors participating in programming through the center. Mr. Landers, who moved from where he was the other night, is correct. 21.3%, which is around just under 6,000 residents out of our 28,000 are 65 or older. We have a limited number of, and there was a question about veterans as well. We have about 20 veterans currently accessing Chapter 115 benefits, which is a very specific benefit. We have many more, Kelly was alluding to, that she's working with to tap into other benefits that are available for veterans. And the best guess today, because it's not tracked as closely as we would like, we believe there are about 1,200 veterans, or people considered veterans, living in Danvers. The vast majority Vietnam or later. We have about 100 World War II vets left and about 150 Korean War vets left. So it's about 4% of the population qualifies as veteran status. So wanted to share that.
Thank you.
And we're going to get started tonight with information technology. Page 27 in the budget, the salary and wage line is consistent with what we've discussed throughout the week. There probably will be some questions about the outsized increase, which I know Mr. Bates is probably palpitating over back there, but Colby can certainly talk about what is driving that. It is part of our ongoing effort to try to move expenses out of free cash and into the operating budget if there are expenses that are ongoing and having to do with software and regular purchases that aren't going anywhere. So Colby Cousins, our IT director, is here, and we'd be happy to answer questions about the budget.
Colby Cousins, IT. Mr. Chair.
Hey, Colby.
Yes, so as the town manager said, there's some movement here from the tech warrant into operating, and there's some centralization of our e-permitting product, which was previously funded by ARPA funds, and we have to find a home for it now, and centralizing it into the IT budget seems to make the most sense. But I don't know if there are any other specific questions about the budget. I'd be happy to answer those.
Arthur?
So just the layout, can you just kind of give a little more detail as to the 59.5% increase? So what exactly is it that is in there?
So that'll be our regular computer refresh, which has become a pretty stable cost. We do a 20% refresh every year. We have a bunch of iPads, same type of refresh cycle. Switching equipment for our infrastructure, our data infrastructure. That's also very stable at about 30 grand a year. And then we have a camera replacement program at about 60,000 that, again, is very stable. About 20% of our fleet a year gets refreshed. And then the last under software maintenance, that is a system-wide electronic permitting program that affects all departments, but it's at its core managed by IT, and that's where we'd like to put the costs as well.
And if I could just clarify, Colby mentioned that the costs were stable for the computer refresh and the iPad, but what I was mentioning earlier, that it's a little like, we know that we spend about $700,000 a year on vehicles. It's never the same two vehicles twice, but the idea that we are going to spend zero some year on vehicles doesn't make sense from a budgeting perspective, and so costs that are predictable and regular, best practice would say those ought to be in your operating budget and not reliant on one-time revenues. So the 20% of devices that Colby's referencing as being a stable expense, we've historically covered that through free cash, And we've been trying each year to move those expenses into the operating budget where we can, because we know that we're gonna be replacing 20% of the devices every year. So it's not a new expense, it's a cost that's moving from the free cash.
That was, I think, the point I was gonna get to,
Sorry.
which is, no, it's okay. This is all things that we already were paying for, we're just moving it to a new location.
Correct.
Okay, thanks, I'm good.
Eric?
And then my follow-up is that, so we would expect to see this amount next year, just as, if this is a recurring cost, so that this is leveling off the number minus the normal increases. Okay. Thank you.
Paul?
So then to follow up on Eric, so at some point after we level off, would it settle back to the previous, let's say, 2024 type budget totals? No?
No, this is sort of resetting, these are ongoing expenses that are now gonna live in the operating budget rather than in the free cash.
That's it for me.
Wally?
So do, your regional IT, do your five employees, and this operating budget cover all of that as well?
Correct, yeah. My employees are in this operating budget. My salary's in the department head's budget.
But I would note that the revenue that's generated, so we have an intermunicipal agreement with Middleton.
Right.
So that, the cost of one of his employees is booked as revenue separate from the tax levy. So in our, is it other local receipts? There's, the salary for that employee is budgeted there. It's
But the employee is here.
the employee, we gross budget it here in the operating budget, but there's offsetting revenue up front. Yep.
And on the camera program, how many cameras do you support?
About 300.
And they are in local buildings, or are they on streets and?
Yeah, they're mostly in local buildings, throughout the schools, the police department, and throughout a lot of the areas where we store equipment related to the electric utility,
Okay.
like our
Everything else.
substations and stuff.
Aaron?
No questions.
Mike?
So I'll just quickly put on my electric light hat and say that at our last electric light meeting, Colby came in front of us and provided us with a great update on probably one of his most important components, which is cybersecurity. And I know that sort of is with him as well, and they do a great job as well, I think, trying to protect both the infrastructure stuff that we have internally and also our own computers. So thank you for that, Colby.
Thank you.
Ted?
The only question I think, Steve, when you say it comes from, it used to come from other revenues, you mean free cash?
Yeah, so we were relying on year-end surplus to cover these ongoing costs.
Okay. And so what, the effect of moving it into the budget, will that generally make free cash lower because we've already budgeted?
It's not there's not a direct line. I mean, when we increase our local receipt projections each year, we're reducing the free cash number on the revenue side. The expenditure side it fluctuates from year to year depending on weather, depending on staffing, depending on a lot of things. This is building more of our ongoing expense into the levy, which is the most resilient revenue source we have. And it's reducing, I mean, so one of the themes in this budget is that we're accepting more risk in some places, but in essence, by trying to get the capitalized operating expenses out of free cash, we're reducing risk in that if our free cash number dries up, we're still able to have the equipment replacement cycle built in.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, one just follow-up. You mentioned Middleton. Now, we have an agreement with some other towns, is that correct?
Correct,
we
yeah,
work
we
with-
have North Shore, we founded the North Shore IT Collaborative, and that's currently 8 communities.
It is eight.
Yeah, we just added Marblehead very recently.
Excellent, okay. That's a source of revenue, I assume, at some
It's a
point?
source of revenue and net revenue, yes.
Yes, thank you, that's it.
And what kind of,
We'll talk during warrant review about how some of those proceeds currently flow into free cash, and then they get appropriated out through the tech warrant for regional expenses.
perfect. Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Colby, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is police department budget. I guess we flipped a coin this year, and fire's going second. But that is not unintentional this year, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, we have Chief Lovell here tonight. The salary and wage increase here looks very modest, but it requires a little bit of context. I believe we mention it in the, we do not mention it. So let me explain the 0.68 increase. So we talked on Tuesday, I'm sorry, about one of the ways that we were able to balance this budget was by accepting a little bit more risk on the revenue side and a little bit more risk on some of the expenditure sides. The budget that you have before you, all of the authorized personnel are there. But in the 10 years that I've been in Danvers and in the years that Jamie has been chief, we have never been fully staffed in our police department, and that is due to the length of time it takes from requesting a list to getting somebody into and through an academy and onto the street. So we are constantly hiring. By the time the next batch of recruits is on the ground and ready to go, we will most likely have another retirement or two. So we're taking a little risk this year. We looked at the trend over the last 5 years, and we reduced the budget by an amount that is equal to our ongoing vacancy rate. The risk, of course, is if by some chance we are fully staffed at some point in FY25, we will be coming back to have a conversation about tapping into FinCom reserve or looking at some of the other budget areas where we might be trending ahead. But we're comfortable at this point and working with the chief to try to get the budget across the finish line. That is one of the areas that we had to make an adjustment. And we, as is noted here, there's a modest decrease in operating driven by the cost of fuel, but we certainly would welcome any questions.
Ted?
Can you quickly talk about like just trends in like the types of calls that you guys have answered? Is there any uptick or downtick in?
So we've seen an increase definitely in shoplifting calls, especially Dick's Sporting Goods, Target, Nordstrom Rack has a large number of shoplifters lately. We did see a uptick of overdoses. Typically what we'll see is that a strong batch or a bad batch gets out in the community, out in the North Shore, we'll see an increase in overdoses. So there was an increase about a month and a half ago, some overdoses.
That's it. Thank you.
Mike?
No, thank you.
No questions, thank you.
I'm good. Thank you, Chief.
Paul?
Maybe this is tied up with what Steve was just mentioning, but when you talk about the fiscal year 2024 accomplishments, now, you mentioned selected four candidates.
Correct.
I assume those are folks you want to hire or have hired.
So this past fiscal year, we hired 4 officers.
Right.
Unfortunately, we lost 2 of the officers throughout the process of field training. One chose to go back to his previous career, one decided just to move on and do something else.
Right.
That's the risk we kind of take with, recruitment and selection, is we try to find the best candidates we can. Both officers decided that this career wasn't for them.
Right. That's it, really. So you're always, basically, what Steve said, you're reaffirming is that you're pretty much going to be in a continued cycle of replacing.
Right.
At some point.
Yep, since the last select board meeting, we had the budget hearing, we had a retirement since then. So in the past, 3 weeks, we had additional retirement, so we have 5 vacancies right now. We have a promising lateral transfer. We're hoping to onboard for early May, which will bring us down to 4. Civil service exam was in March of this year. Results will be out July 1st, right around July 1st. And we'll probably take us 6 months to go through the selection process between calling for listing of civil service, background investigations, prepping for an academy. Our goal would be get 4 recruits in the academy in probably January of 2025.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
Sure. Really appreciate all the work that you do, Chief, and responsiveness to questions that I've had previously. The only question I have on this is, I know other communities are challenged by homelessness and just any, I don't know if your department is the one that handles what may occur in Danvers.
We do have some issues in the community. Right now, there is one up on Route 1 by 95. There's an encampment up there. We're currently working with the state to get that removed. Right now, the state is trying to get some social workers to go in and try to find some housing. Unfortunately, we didn't have much luck on our side trying to find some services. I believe the quote for the cleanup was around $35,000 to $40,000 that we picked up by the state for removing of that encampment.
Thank you.
Arthur?
Just so I'm clear, so when you're fully staffed, so right now it's looking like 58.5 employment positions for the last 3 years, right? So if you're fully staffed, what would you have?
That is, I think that number is our peak number, is what we would hope to have if we were fully staffed.
Okay,
We are down from that number.
okay, all right. And what I just heard is that it takes, unless you get a lateral hire, it's gonna take you upwards of a year to be able to get the new group in, so.
Correct. It's about a 6-month process to get the list, background, get them in the academy. Academy is about 6 months, then we do 2 months of field training, so it's almost even a little bit longer than that.
So I think it sounds like you're pretty, the risk that you're taking seems to be a pretty solid risk, as far as that's concerned, so.
Correct.
All right, thanks, Jamie, appreciate it.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Next is Fire Department. We have our, I don't know what to call him, our amazing fire chief, who also happens to be a short timer because he has decided that this summer is when he's ready to start his next chapter. He has not yet submitted, nor have I accepted a letter of resignation, but we know that it's coming. And the budget here, it's a little more complicated than the police budget. You may recall, I think 4 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago, the chief and the deputy were successful in securing a $1 million SAFER grant from the federal government. That fully funded the cost of 3 firefighters for 3 years. And almost as soon as we received the grant, we started thinking about how to absorb the cost of those firefighters when that grant period ended. The budget here increase is offset in part by a reduction in overtime. It's also offset by an increase in revenue that isn't reflected here, but it has to do with a review and update that we did of the fire alarm monitoring service that the fire department provides to organizations, institutions in town. A portion of that cost, which all parties agreed belonged in the budget, was the creation of a second fire prevention officer. Jim Brooks did that job by himself for many, many years and did it well, but was really doing the job of more than one person with all of his plan reviews and education. So the grant funded 3 firefighters, but it allowed us to have the flexibility to create a second FPO position. And we'll continue to work with Bob for as long as we have him, and then with Brian and whoever joins that team in whatever role they take moving forward to continue to monitor that. Otherwise, as you can see, there's a modest reduction in the operating budget, and we'd certainly be happy to take questions.
Arthur?
I think I'm all set.
I'm all set.
Paul?
Back to the SAFER. We have 3 positions, and right now, we're looking at consistently across the line, 52 full-time employees.
That's correct.
Is that going to drop down, or is that going to stay the same as we speak right now?
So that's part of the work that the town manager was talking about, we've been working on since the inception of this grant, is finding ways to absorb those salaries into our budget when the time comes. It's next February, it'll be February of '25 that grant expires. So we're working to keep those positions. That's part of the reason for the reductions. We've tried to really, really cut deep so that we have the money to keep those positions, because we've seen a payoff. As the town manager mentioned, there's been what I promised him was a reduction in overtime, and there's been a significant reduction in overtime being fully staffed.
Right.
A lot of value in
So
that.
they are part of the 52 personnel count?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, yes.
Wally?
I really don't have any. Is there a tower truck back?
Came back yesterday.
Is it in service?
It's in service.
When you talk about updated maintenance to alarms, was that in the school system too? Was that like?
Every town building has what's called a master box.
Yeah.
You've seen that they're made by Gamewell. It's a red box. It's got the, so every town building has one, and a lot of private businesses have one.
Okay.
And a lot of schools, a lot of religious buildings. So we we found out through some research that there was some organizations that we weren't billing in the past, religious organizations mostly, and found out that we can't do that, and so we started charging them. We increased the fee, and we started charging additional. So that is also, in addition to what we talked about, making a lot of cuts, we're trying to increase the revenue so that we can offset and absorb those 2 positions and stay at 52.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Mike?
Good luck with your retirement.
Thank you.
I don't think I have any questions. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chief, congratulations on your retirement. Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And before he sits down, and while he's still up there, Bob loves nothing more than having people talk about him publicly. You may not know that about him. But I do want to take just a minute to acknowledge the work that, he and Bob Hyburn worked so well as a team to lead the department. Bob took over right as COVID was starting and had to lead the department through a very challenging time. He also took over in the run-up to the 2020 presidential election, which was a challenging time for very different reasons. And I just want to acknowledge the work Bob has done running that department, leading that department, and setting it up for success moving forward. So it's in a great place, and I'm excited to see what comes next. And congratulations, Bob.
Thank you.
We
I
will miss
appreciate
you. We will miss your biting sense of humor, and
And our little chats.
and our little chats. That's right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Last but certainly not least, the Public Works budgets. We have the team in the room. Director David Lane, I see Town Engineer Stephen King, Operations Director Rob Dever, and our Assistant Utility Director Clint Allen. And hiding out of sight is Angelica Medina, our Business Manager. So next we will go through the Public Works tax supported budget, which starts on page 45 in the operating budget. And the footnote here sort of speaks for itself, but the cost of trash services is budgeted, is fully funded and gross budgeted in the operating budget, and it is offset in part by the revenue that is reflected in the local receipts line, which is new this year for FY '25. So part of the operating increase here has to do with the decision that was made last December, 6 months into our new contract, to restore the weekly recycling pickup. We had gone to biweekly as part of a cost-saving measure. It saved us about $280,000 in our contract. But once the new system was in place, that was sort of ran laps around any other question we were getting here, was how difficult it was for some families to manage biweekly recycling, because we have a community that's very good at recycling and has spent many years learning how to recycle. And so by pulling back on that, that was creating a lot of hardship. So part of the increase here is related to that. And I'm sure there will be some questions, and certainly the team that can answer those questions is in the room, so we'd be happy to take those.
Ted?
Oh, my turn, huh? I don't think I have too many questions. I guess one question, there's, once in a while, there's been overflow of cardboard at the transfer station. Have we adjusted capacity there now to be able to handle when people drop off cardboard? Because I know I drop off cardboard because it doesn't fit in it doesn't lend itself to being put in the blue bin.
I guess the answer is capacity, no. But we went through a time period where our 34 years with the town, Frank retired, and so we finally filled his position. We have eyes on it. During the time he was transitioning out, it got kind of lapsed there, and now we have eyes on it and have had many meetings with Republic about taking care of that.
I think that's really it for me.
Mike?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Aaron?
I'm good, thanks.
Wally?
So it may be a budgeting question, but my refuse collection, 2025 proposed, it went from 1,000,001 last year to 900,000 this year? Is that because it's accounting difference, or is there an error here?
No, I think, I'll defer to these guys, but part of what happened there is when we put this budget together last year, we were basing that on assumptions. So there's money moving between the line items with a year of experience now to sort of
So it's an
put the
accounting
costs where they
difference,
belong.
not an
Yep,
actual
yeah, yeah.
Kind of a big deal.
Bennett?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a planning prob, but how are my streetlights down $36,000? I know I don't have fewer streetlights.
That's correct. Thank you, David
not
Lane, Director of
changing
Public
bulbs?
Works. Our business manager did an audit of our streetlights and worked with the electric division to make sure we were paying for the exact number of them, and we were hitting exactly 12 bills every year. If you look back at our past expenditures, we had one year was up a little high, one was a little low. We weren't getting the bills quite right, and we made sure now that we're paying the right amount. So this is an audit of all of them, make sure we're paying the right bill.
Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, one quick, couple of questions. Recycling went up 110%. Now, is that because of the contract?
So the biggest thing with recycling is we're still collecting it. Now we're back to weekly collection, but now we have recycling processing. To process the recycling costs almost as much as it does to collect it. We never had that in the old contract.
Amplify the processing for me, would you please?
That means they collect the recycling, they take it to a facility, they're sorted, baled, and marketed. We have to pay for that process of sorting and marketing those recyclables. We pay a tipping fee for recycling now.
Is this new with this contract?
Correct.
And going back to the contract, and this is, maybe I missed it way back, I don't think I did, but quite possible. When we negotiated this new contract with Republic, I believe we were going to completely automate, it was gonna be automation and get rid of the guys on the back trucks and things. Now, that hasn't happened. Is it they don't have the trucks yet? What's holding that up?
Correct. They don't have the trucks yet. However, we're getting the price for automatic collection. So we're paying just the regular price like it would be automatic. So they're having to cost that guy on the back of the truck. The one half of it is us changing the bins. They used to have to pick up 3 bins at every single house. Now they're tipping 1 bin. So they are getting the benefit of that, but just not the automatic truck. And if you notice, the truck does have a flipper on the back of the truck where they can flip it right in. So they're halfway there. You know, rumor has it the truck, one of them is close to coming in. It's going to come in June. We'll believe it when we see it. However, it won't have any cost impact on us.
It will not.
It will not. We are already paying the automatic price.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Eric?
So, strange question about plowing, snow plowing, I would say. Since I live in an area that does not get town service, my question is, have you ever contracted out? Because we got to pay somebody anyway, you know, when we start generating revenue. Is that something the town's ever thought of?
So explain that again. I lost you somewhere in
I'm in a
that.
condo complex.
Oh, in the condo complex. Should we plow condo complexes?
Should you get a revenue, right, source, right? So I'm just, we have to contract out somebody. I think you could undercut and gobble up some revenue across town. So it's just on my mind. Plow revenue is down this year.
Yep.
But not to cut into anybody else's business, but whomever, did I get you? It's something that
Well, you can drive
if we're in a condo association, it is one of those fixed costs that we're always shopping. It's not really a big market.
Yep.
And so I just want to put that out there as we're looking for pennies. Let's pick some pennies up.
So I'm not sure if we've taken a deep dive into us trying to find a way to plow condominium complexes.
Driving right past it, so I'm just saying.
We do go right past. One thing is we do know all the DPW employees are in plows. We get them all in. We have plows for anybody we can get in. So if we were to get into plowing condos, it would be with we'd be hiring private contractors. So now we're out there competing with private industry,
Okay.
competing with the landscape companies, and it may be better to leave it private.
I understand.
Can I ask you a quick question on the snow?
Sure.
And obviously, we've had a couple slow years. if we have like a big year like 2015 or whatever, how much does that extra impact does that have on a budget?
So the last big year, I've got our 5-year, more than our 5-year projection. Wow, so it's been a while now. So FY '22, we spent 721. But if we jump back to fiscal '20, so we budgeted fiscal '20, so that's 2020 money. We budgeted 920. That meant our 5-year average was 920 back then. So that means we had a couple $1 million years. So a bad winter, we're gonna be at like 1.2, 1.3 million.
Okay.
Where are we now?
Rob, do you have that number?
I got it. Yep. What was it that we, our budget was for 714, 488 this year. And we have 269,000 remaining that we didn't spend.
Okay.
How many tons of salt did we dump?
What was that?
How many tons of salt did we dump?
Oh, a lot. We've gone from less contracting and used more salt just due to the, I don't have the number, the tonnage off the top of my head, but I do have the price. Our winter chemicals, out of $217,000, we have about $12,000 left.
And we just got another truck with a wing plow on it?
That's correct.
Reason we have that, I mean, we only have so many linear miles, we can use that.
And we get less and less contractors to help us out every year.
Once again, if I can't drop the plow, what's the sense in having it?
I
How
think
many
we
have
can
been
drop
torn
the
out?
plow.
Excuse me?
We can drop the plows. And we dropped the plows in the last storm because the salt really wasn't doing anything.
Right. But most of the time, especially when there's traffic, our streets aren't wide enough to.
Of course they are.
I'm only running a 9-foot plow, and mine doesn't fit every place. So, I mean,
We have,
I'm just asking the
I can
question.
drive
You-
a wing
you can
plow down
justify
any,
it, so-
pretty much any road the town has. He just says, why do we
Yeah,
have it?
where do we use it other than, you know?
On main arteries.
Yes, so I guess, Rob, if I could, so when we got our first wing plow, we put on what we call the Pike route, we run it down Endicott Street, down Water Street, out there. So other ones, we would use it on our big streets, like a Summer Street, ones that we can run, Route 62, all the big the arterial roads.
One of the other things they do, even after the storm comes back, that's what we use to push the snow back for the next time a snowstorm comes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead. So from my trash trucks that are coming in aspect?
Oh, they say June.
All right.
But then they'll also say they're not going to start using one. They need all 4 to
Are
run
we
the
still
program.
paying a $6,000 stipend every month?
No, I think you already answered that, Dave.
I know we're paying the same fee, but are we paying like a $6,000 stipend until the truck came in?
We
Is
don't
that
have to
not
do
in our
that.
contract? I don't have the contract in front of me, so.
Yes, so to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe we're paying the $6,000 fee. I think it ended
Were
up that
we?
we didn't, we didn't have to pay an extra fee for the non-automatic when we went back to the weekly recycling collection. We'll do a double check on that, but I do not believe we're paying anything extra for that.
Thank you.
Arthur?
I'm all set.
Okay, any questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next is Sewer Enterprise Fund. I think folks know, but I'll just say we are a member of the South Essex Sewerage District, so the sewer that is generated in Danvers flows there for treatment. But we have staff that maintains the system in Danvers so that the sewage can make its way to the treatment plant. A large part of our operating budget for sewer is the assessment that is charged back to member communities by the SESD. As is noted here, the decrease in the budget is driven by declining debt service in the budget. And we'd be happy to take questions that the committee has about the sewer budget.
Arthur?
I'm all set.
Eric?
Just a quick question on, am I looking at it? Vehicle maintenance, up 10,000, am I on the right one? 49. Yep. Yeah, vehicle maintenance, increase of $10,000, just some thoughts on that.
No.
So as you can look, it's, our expenditure on that goes up and down each year.
Okay.
Lately, we've had a lot of expenditures for our Vector truck, or the pumping, it's the high velocity and vacuum truck that we're gonna see coming up that we're replacing. It appears that we may have kept that a year, year and a half longer than we should have, and the new one's not gonna come in for another, so that's to pay for that truck, fixing it.
Paul?
I'm all set, thank you.
Wally?
I'm good.
No questions.
Mike?
No, thanks.
Ted?
I'm good.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
On to the water budget. Again, overview for folks who may be watching. So the town of Danvers has a water treatment plant that is located in Middleton. It serves the towns of Middleton and Danvers. Each town has its own staffing to maintain their systems in their communities, but we do operate the water treatment plant on behalf of both communities. Similar to sewer, that we're seeing a declining debt service, which is keeping the budget increase low. We do have some significant capital outlay expenses having to do with the treatment process at the plant. And we would be happy to take questions about that or the budget itself.
Ted?
With the decrease in debt service, can we expect to see similar decreases in the near term, or is that gonna? So between the two, that's like $170,000, right?
Yeah, so in the warrant articles that you'll see in a couple of weeks, we have a $9 million borrowing for the next 5-year phase of water, so.
Nope.
Yeah, but again, to the point that was brought up, I think, by Mike last night, you see the benefits here of a declining debt schedule.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mike?
I guess I sort of ask this question every year, and as we now approach a long-term sort of increasing debt service of the facilities that we have, I've always been concerned that 25 years ago, we had a hospital, and that hospital presented some real economic opportunities for us in regards to what we did, and then there were a number of regulation changes and legal changes that resulted in lots of pressure to get municipalities out of the hospital business. Obviously, it's a different industry, but are we, as we look to invest another $9 or $10 million into our water infrastructure, are we confident that those same style of sources or forces are not going to be in play to take the small municipalities out of the water business?
Hi, Steve King, town engineer. The reference to the $9 million future authorization we'll talk about in the warrant articles, that's related to our distribution network, not related to our actual treatment plant process.
No, I'm talking about the business distribution, the whole thing.
The whole thing together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we run a very sustainable operation.
Not interested in the sustainability of our operation. The question is, and I know you have to sort of look into a crystal ball, but there has been some indication in the past that from a regulatory situation, there may be a move to push smaller municipal operators out of the treatment and distribution process. If we're going to invest $10 million into our distribution process, I think we really need to be completely confident that those forces are not in play. I know it's not easy to answer, but I do think there has been some indication that that might be the case.
Before Dave, I know David wants to say, I'm going to take a crack at this before David gets a chance. So the one difference between hospitals and water.
No, I know there's
we
differences,
can
but-
drive to Boston for medical care. We can't drive to Boston for water.
Yeah.
I think part of what you're referencing is the state is not being explicit, but there have been overtures that they want to see more communities joining the MWRA and putting a straw in the Quabbin. At this point in time, the cost to do that is considerably higher than any short-term investments we need to make to keep our own system functional. We have faced threats and challenges. We have an ozone system at the plant that we're going to try for a second time to put to work. That was a requirement of the DEP when we did our $17 million plant upgrade years ago. We're still paying for that. There was some new, Stephen and I were just talking this week about new guidance from the EPA having to do with PFAS and thresholds that not only Danvers but many communities are going to struggle. So the challenges aren't going away. The community, the North Shore Water Suppliers, have been talking for the last year as a group under the leadership of Senator Tarr about capacity and future capacity, and then just context for our own system. So there's a notion that we are a water poor system because of the restrictions that we're under in the summertime, which in large part are purely a creation of permit and not of reality. We operate well below our permitted and registered amounts on an annual basis. There is ample space within our existing permit for future growth. There are droughts from time to time in this basin, but there have been droughts in this basin going back 150 years, and I think as part of this process this year, we found a study from Weston and Sampson from like 1915 that acknowledged that the tributaries on the Ipswich River went dry before the first water supplier existed. 2 summers ago, we were 3 weeks away from a crisis where we were going to have to truck in water from Beverly Salem. This past summer, we had so much water coming out of the reservoir that we were just watching it spill back into the river. So Bill Clark used to say we don't have a supply issue here, we have a storage issue. We still have a storage issue. The town owns space in other communities for future reservoirs. The permitting process for that is borderline impossible, but not completely impossible. I guess that's I think that's a long way of saying I think that maintaining the system is not really an option. It's something that we have to do. We have debt and rate modeling to continue to do that for the foreseeable future, but the DEP will always have a seat at the table and share their thoughts openly and freely about what they think we ought to be doing with our system.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my primary concern has been, and I agree with you, we don't have a lot of options necessarily, but you know, there has been some, as you said, overtures made that we could get into a position where we have $12 million of debt on the books, and then we're basically told, you don't run a system anymore, you got to join the MWRA, in which case we're going to have to hold on to that debt. And I don't know how, even if they did that, it would be very difficult to deal with, and I don't know what else we can do. But
I guess one thing I would say is that our state delegation is very aware of the permitting and regulatory dynamic. It's really difficult to imagine a scenario where the rug gets pulled out from underneath us. I think if there was ever a point where connecting to the MWRA became a must-do instead of a nice-to-do, we would sit with the delegation and with the MWRA, and we'd be able to figure out a pathway to make that work. Because even if the MWRA is restricted by certain regs on their side, the legislature has some options for how to make that workable for towns and cities.
Thanks.
No questions.
Are we one of the few towns that has their own water supply, of the smaller ones, Wenham, Hamilton, Topsfield, where are we on that one?
Oh, we're one of the largest suppliers on the North Shore region, but there are plenty. There are different sizes between medium, large, small municipalities that have different water treatment plants and groundwater well sources. So pretty much each individual community, besides a few commingled partners, as Steve mentioned, Salem, Beverly, have joint water systems, along with us, Danvers and Middleton.
Do we have agreements with other towns and cities that if we were to run low, would be able to help, that'd be able to help out?
That's correct. We have in place certain agreements, specifically one, obviously with Middleton, that we have an intermunicipal agreement, but we also have contingencies in place to utilize Salem Beverly water supply and also Peabody's water supply as well.
Are any of those 3 cities connected with NWRA?
There's a small section of Peabody that is connected to the MWRA.
Small section of Peabody, yeah, okay. All right. That's it for me, thank you.
Eric?
No question. I just really appreciated Mike's question and the town manager's answer. That was very informative. I appreciate it.
I'm all set.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
So Rodney's right, there's no vote required on this budget, but we'll walk through and answer whatever questions you have. We have our Assistant Utility Director, Clint Allen, here, and again, Angelica Medina from the business office. We are seeing, I believe, we're seeing a slight uptick in sales after a period of declining sales. That's due in part to some of the incentives and rebates and investments that the division has made in terms of bringing more people off of fossil fuels and onto electric based transportation and home heating and things of that nature. The budget, I think the Finance Committee knows, but anybody who happens to be looking at their budget, it looks very different from the other budgets. That is because the electric department is regulated by FERC accounting rather than GASB. I'm not an accountant. Modified accrual, thank you, Rodney. So it looks different. It's more of a cost center-based budget than what we see on the general fund side. Level service, level staffing, and any questions you have, it won't be me, but there are people in the room who'd be happy to answer those. So. Arthur? Page 56.
No, other than saying I'm a very happy customer of Danvers Electric, I have no questions.
A general question in terms of the trends, and you mentioned that sales are kind of back up, and given that electric car sales seem to be trending down, or et cetera, just any observations on what's going on in the overall with electricity usage in our area, region, or town, either or?
Clint Allen, Assistant Utility Director. So regionally, electrification is the big word right now. So people, I mean, we are seeing an uptick in the sale locally of electric vehicles. We've seen a big uptick in our home electric vehicle rebate, charger rebate program. We've seen a big uptick in, as Town Manager mentioned, we've seen an uptick in our heat pump sales to residential customers. So we're seeing an overall trend of people really they're going towards an all-electric fuel source versus, like the oil, the propane. We're currently working with a housing development that is trying to get off of National Grid natural gas, and they're looking at doing all-electric air source heat pumps for I think it's like 30 units. So I think generally speaking, we're going to be seeing a trend towards increased electricity usage.
Thank you.
Pass.
No questions?
No, I know everything that needs to be known about this budget. So, yeah. No,
We call him Humble Mike for a reason.
No, I want to acknowledge the great job that the staff does. I get the chance to meet with them every month, and the electric division is perhaps at this point, I think, the most underrated but exemplary group that we have in town in regards to the way it works. And I think that Arthur made the point perfectly clear. We have our office in Topsfield, and we're National Grid, and every time there's any type of a storm, we're just waiting for the power to fail. And we pay double or sometimes triple in order to have that and so I don't think sometimes the citizens in Danvers realize what a great resource having the Danvers Electric is, and they've been fantastic, and
I'm not a very happy customer of our Topsfield service.
No, no, exactly. But you get the best service in the area for literally next to Peabody, which there was one time I think we were under Peabody, but we still don't know what Peabody does. We think they have their own little mini nuclear power plant that they keep in the back room someplace. But beyond that, it's been great. So thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to be a backup generator salesman in Danvers. No, I don't have anything else. Normally there's a graph that shows where where you guys consume the energy from.
There you go.
It's our favorite slide.
Clint was waiting for
Yeah,
that. He
this
wants
is
to
my-
talk about this.
This is my prize pick here for the whole budget presentation. So this year, I sort of, I reconfigured it to make a little more sense to track by resource type. So if we start at the largest slice of the pie, that's our long-term, extended to 2050, that's our Seabrook Nuclear contract. Next to that is our other long-term, extended out to 2045 at this
Are
point.
you going clockwise?
Correct, yes,
Thank
yes, yep. There's our Millstone 3, that's another long-term nuclear contract. Next to that is a shorter-term bilateral, additional Seabrook nuclear contract. Following that, we get in, so that's really our nuclear baseload. So if you ever charge your car at night, you can make the joke that your car runs on nuclear energy. Just fun fact. But going from there, we go over to what is left of our carbon-based contract. So starting with our Stony Brook is it's a very small slice, you can barely see it, but it's actually an oil peaking unit that we hardly ever use. We only use it really in the winter times when there's a deficiency on the transmission grid and they need to bring that online. And then going through the grays, those are basically our natural gas contracts, or what's left of them at this point. Hitting up to the green around almost 12 o'clock, we have a First Light Hydro contract, a long-term NYPA hydro contract, Brown Bear hydro contract, a new HQ Energy that came online this year. That's another hydro contract coming down from Canada. And then we have the purple is our 2 wind contracts. And then the last gold band is what we have for solar for the 2024 calendar year. And then the small slice that looks like it's missing is the 2%. So basically we're 98% hedged. We have a 2% exposure to market rates, so it helps keep our rates extremely stable. And of note, this year we are close to 75% non-carbon based generation. So we're well ahead of thank you. We're well ahead of the state's mandate. 2030 is 50%. They're not looking for 75% until 2040. So we're all very happy about that.
And I can say that one of the things of having that portfolio that we have is that we get these credits, and we're able to actually sell those credits to other basically suppliers, the big suppliers who do not have the same excellent portfolio that we have. And we generate a substantial amount of money for the ratepayers through the sale of those credits. So that's one thing. And then I think the other thing too is if you could just give everybody sort of an update of where we're at with what would be the 2 biggest, well, 1 biggest solar array, which is at the old dump site, and also where we're at with the schools.
Sure, yeah. So I'll start with the schools because those will be going online later this year. So we've partnered up with a solar energy developer to install panels on the Smith High School and the Highland School. So total, just for a reference to give you an idea of the sizing of it, it's going to be about the size of the darkest gold band as far as total energy production into our system. But as far as local behind the meter in-town generation, it's a pretty decent sized system. It's about 450 homes worth of electricity per year. We are done at the Smith School. We're waiting for final permit approval. High school is scheduled for Patriots Day to be cut over, and they're buttoning up things at the Highland School. So we're hoping that everything will be online from that sometime. It should be by this summer. And then for the landfill, as everybody's aware, we have extended the filling operation another year as we realized we could bring in more resources into the site. And we're now in the final design phases, or the final design stages of the system itself and how we're going to configure that on the landfill and how we're going to actually be able to tie that back into the Danvers electric grid.
Yeah, I know everybody appreciates the
Oh, yeah.
reliability of the system, but I think the fact that we have only 2% exposure to spikes in spot prices is pretty unique. And if you watch anything that's gone on in the energy markets in the last couple of years, people don't appreciate it because they don't get the surprise bills, but they've been the spikes in natural gas prices and everything going on in Russia and the Ukraine has been pretty brutal for people that don't have the level of hedging that we do. So I think we should just keep doing that. It's great. That's it.
The biggest piece of the pie up there is nuclear, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
What's your, well, I guess this is just an opinion, you may be looking for your opinion, but I'm just curious, is there a future for nuclear in this country? I mean, we're relying on it pretty heavily, I think. I think we even have a piece of the pie, don't we? Yeah, so, is there any fear that these plants will eventually outlive their lifetime and we're gonna be in trouble? Or are we pretty sure we've got this thing nailed down for the next 20 or 30, 40 years?
So through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or the NRC, so they're in charge of all the permitting
Yeah.
for all the nuclear facilities in the United States. So they recently, or within the last 5 years, extended the Seabrook that was scheduled to come offline in 2035. They've pushed it out to 2050 formally, so we're good. We're good with Seabrook till at least 2050. The Millstone 3 unit was a similar situation. I think they were supposed to come offline 2030. They've pushed that out to 2045 now. And the way they're able to do that is every 2 years or so, we take a forced outage. We budget, it's in our budget. We see how it's going to impact, what we're doing, but they basically take an outage to the whole entire plant and they do continual maintenance on it. So they're able to keep these systems online for longer. And as far as, I guess, the temperature or the interest in nuclear and building new nuclear plants, since this whole electrification kind of conversation started in the last 4 or 5 years, I've seen a lot of renewed interest just in, our trade magazines and at conferences. I mean, they're talking about, they're pouring a lot of money into fission right now, into fission plants and smaller, they call them like micro nuke plants. So there's definitely some new interest in rebolstering the nuclear program.
Okay, good, thank you. That's it for me.
Property taxes. I noticed that 50,000 in 22, 25, 3, and 23, and it budgeted for the same amount next year? Is that the pilot? Or is that?
Oh, the North
Oh,
Reading, property, yeah.
Okay.
That we own, that we have to pay North Reading to.
Gotcha, okay.
Yep, maintain.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Mr. Bradstreet.
All right.
Sergeant at Arms.
One.
Bill Bradstreet, town meeting member, precinct 1. Not a question, but a comment. I believe the electric division last year was nationally brought to the attention. They were exceptional. I think everybody agrees that they are. I just wanted to mention it. I don't have the newspaper article with me, but they were nationally recognized for what they do for us.
I think it was the Municipal Light Board.
We're all working together.
Thank you, Bill. That counts as 2. Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
We don't have it.
Oh, that's right, yes,
no,
thank you.
that's
Yeah,
right.
we'll hold on to the warrant article. Yeah.
Well, this is it. So Bill has one question left, and he saved it till the very end. The last thing we need to talk about tonight are the capital outlay requests that are supported by the general fund, except for the school vehicles, which are a standalone warrant article. So if you go to page 94 in your budget book, we have $335,000 in tax-supported public works vehicles, $304,000 to replace 5 cruisers in the police department, $80,000 related to 1/3 of the turnout gear for our fire department, and a field mower for recreation. And we'd be happy to take questions about those purchases, which again are on page 94 in the budget book.
Ted?
No questions.
Mike?
I guess as far as the vehicles, are any of the vehicles electric? Are they, in terms of?
Not at these price points.
Is it the, yeah.
none of the DPW are electric this year. In fact, some of the equipment is lawnmowers and chippers for the forestry division.
It's possible some of the cruisers are hybrid. They're not electric, though. Like, we may have some hybrid.
I don't know if you know of any electric vehicles that you guys are getting. Oh, police is getting a Ford Lightning.
That was from last year, though, so that's coming online very soon. I think it's just getting the final equipment installed.
Got it, Mike?
That's it?
No questions.
Wally?
So I'm interested in hearing more about your factor truck.
So we could talk tonight, but that is a standalone warrant article that'll be discussed.
But it's here and it's open to, I'll just talk about it then.
You can ask the questions now, or we're gonna vote on it on April 24th.
If you have any questions on it.
Let's push it off.
Okay.
We'll vote that night. We might as well wait. We're gonna vote that night on it.
Paul?
The two passenger vans, those are the school?
Those are also a standalone warrant article. Those are you'll recall, we approved these last year, and the lead time was so significant that we actually did a transfer in February to authorize the purchase of a school bus, which was the next piece that was up for replacement. But we still need those vans, so now we're back to get the appropriation in place for those.
How about you mentioned the school bus. Last night, how many school buses do we actually operate? We own.
I think the number is 5, and we have 5. One of them we use for a spare. We have 4 routes, and I think the school is trying to get up to 5 routes to accommodate more children.
Any idea of the average age of those 4 or 5?
We have them. They go on a probably an 8-year rotation. I think I have that. Oh, I took it out.
Okay, that's okay. It's not on the warrant, so I'll withdraw the question. I'm all set.
We know what question is coming, though, on April 24th, though, Paul. Thank you.
Eric?
No question.
I'm all set. Okay. Questions from the audience?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We return Monday, April 22nd, to begin our warrant review. Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.